Antonio Garcia here. Very, very grateful for all of you to be joining us today on August 1st, brand new month. As you know, over the weekend, we got some very, very heartbreaking news, some really, really tough news about our very own Tharifa, who passed away. She was what we would call like a strong staple of the Matrix community. Just really quickly, when I got involved with TIR, when I first got into the Matrix ecosystem, Tharifa was someone that about a year and a half ago, like she was very, very enthusiastic. She was extremely welcoming, very open. It was like a kid that all of a sudden, like there's a new puppy around, you just want to play. And so that's how I felt when I joined the community, was having someone like her, just being so positive, so open. And our heart goes out to her. And I just really wanted to quickly bring that up, and then also bring Brian on board to speak a little bit more about that.
Yeah, how's everybody doing here? It's obviously very, very shocking news to hear something like that. And it really makes you lean into hopefully into faith. It's really the only place you can go from here. There's no answers. You're never going to get any kind of answers from something as tragic as that. And I think the key thing to do is to really reflect on what a blessing. So we're not going to do wins today, except I do want to say a win for the Matrix community. When you talk about foundational people, like people, she was with the Matrix from the beginning, one of the first people in the first year there, and just always a beacon of light. If you guys knew her, you knew that she was always positive, and she had a lot of not so easy things happen in her life over the years, and she just man, she really embodied what we want in the community of the Matrix. She's in the Mindset Masters and thinking in the results, and she just always showed up. So a couple of amazing things that happened from the community, and she always used to live into the community too. She would consistently say that this is her place, this is her family, this is where she comes to connect, even as she was going through challenges. And you want to talk about, the impression of increase. I can't think of anybody that really would embody that more, or the type of people we want in the Matrix community, that just really lived it, breathed it, and always focused on what was good, and always got out there. And I mean, she's 64 years old doing modeling pageants, right? Like, you want to talk about crushing terror barriers and just really embodying the content. Can't say enough good things about her. She ended up writing 2 books that she credits that, I guess the power of the community, being able to lean on people. I know she had about 15 women that were in a group that were all from, in the Matrix, came like a little subgroup. She had that support system, and she was one of our longest members. So she's not easily replaced. Not that you ever want to replace anybody. And the only thing I wrote down on my paper here is faith. Like, it's just really leaning into faith. It's about, I think that's what faith is really all about. So if anybody does have a memory or something you want to share, feel free. We're not going to do wins, except that it was an amazing win for us to be able to experience her life, and that's going to continue. So if anybody does want to say anything, feel free to raise your hand, open up. We are inviting all of you to next Monday's Mindset Master. We're doing all 4 communities. We're going to invite to next Monday at 7:00 Eastern to share experiences and things like that. We wanted to let a little bit of time go by so that friends could digest that stuff. But if anybody does want to say anything, feel free to raise your hand and chime in. If not, you don't feel like you have to either. Everybody good? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Just really quickly, I didn't really have the luxury to know her the way that a lot of people did know her, but I will say her energy was absolutely magical, so light and fairy, and like she was just pure love, right? Just love everywhere she went. And I just have to add in there that she was 64, but she looked like 30. Like, she was a hot mama, let me tell you. Like, she's gorgeous. So I just want to say thank you, because like through this whole community, I had the opportunity to have a couple conversations with her, and her energy is absolutely beautiful. And I'm just a huge believer that so many people are so much stronger in spirit. So just know that she's all around everywhere.
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
Really around,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Val?
I'm going to try to read this from her without crying. But she had just texted me last week and said, "Thank you so much. You know how much I appreciate Matrix and TIR. I know people need to know how it is, how it has transformed so many through lives. Our program that Brian and Maddie have made been a great mentor for so many and for us. How powerful it is to have a tribe matrix to keep us in alignment and consistency to our personal and business growth to continue to expand our mindset." That's just her all the time.
Just, yeah, she was always like that, for sure. Anybody else before we get going? I think it's very fitting that today we're going to go over content in the book God Works Through. I'm not sure what we'll unpack, but I'm sure there'll be something from this. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen, and we can continue. Let's see. And again, guys, if anything comes to you, just feel free to butt in, raise your hand, whatever you want. I'm just going to start masterminding in the content, and let's see what comes up. It says, is your current problem here, or have you some pet problems of your own that make you unhappy, that keep you disturbed and insecure? It doesn't make any difference what the particular problem or difficulty may be. The treatment is to take your thought away from the condition or problem and place it upon the spiritual reality of the solution. What's interesting is I'm reading Brian Proctor's book. It's My Father Knew the Secret. I highly recommend you guys grab that one. It's from Bob's son, Brian. And one of the things I just read, it's a caption from Bob. I think it's one of his own quotes. It said, "You are the problem and you are the solution." And it really just simplifies the fact that our perspective on everything is what matters, including what we're talking about here today. It's how we process the information. It's whether we look for what we call the good or the not so good. It's the lessons we take. It's the application of faith. A whole bunch of things that and Bob had a good way of simplifying that. Says there's many forms and methods of prayer and treatment, but the essential in all prayer is to know that you know that what you have asked in prayer is already yours. You have no doubt repeated those words many times, but the mere repetition of the words does not change or accomplish anything. What do you guys think it meant by that statement right there? The mere repetition of the words does not change or accomplish anything. What else do we need, Antonio?
So there's the saying, and then there's the internalization. And I think what it's saying is like, without internalization, repetition doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, that's my understanding too. And I used to do that, by the way. And it is it's an okay starting point. I remember even in the book Think and Grow Rich, it is an okay starting point to just repeat something kind of robotically, as long as that doesn't stop there. It usually leads down the path of understanding and emotionalizing the ideas, internalizing, like you said, Antonio. But it does not do really anything just to write something over and over and over again if we don't get emotionally involved in the spirit of the wish fulfilled. Mr. Patterson, can you take over where it says that is right here? That is why you are warned against vain repetition.
I will. I just got a question for Valerie before we start. Valerie, are you going to be in Chicago?
Yes, sir.
I'm looking forward to giving you a giant hug.
Oh, don't make me cry even more. I can't afford any more wrinkles.
Yeah, guys, we have damn near 100% attendance. With the Elite 100, it's not like half the people show up. Almost every single one of you is going to be there, and it's really says a lot about the community. So I'm looking forward to seeing each and every one of you and giving you guys a hug. So,
well, love to everybody on this call. It's a sobering reminder of how important our relationships are and how important every minute of every day is. So I love you all. All right, let me pick this up. That is why you are warned against vain repetitions and much speaking. If you are not free before you say you are free, the parroting of words will not make you free. Did you want me to read further? Or is that it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought I was just going with the yellow.
No,
No worries.
until something either sparks your question or comment or anybody else in the group.
I think it's interesting that just repetitiously repeating something is not necessarily enough. I think what this is really tapping into is going from our head to our heart. It's really easy consciously just to, that's what school is, right? Remember, here's your teacher, here's your test. Remember, hopefully we pass. Unfortunately, school teaches us what to think, but not how to think. I think the way to think properly is to let it go from our conscious mind into our subconscious, and then ultimately our heart, if that's not all interconnected anyways.
Well, what
So-
you're talking about there, Chris, is and this is through all the different books, religious books, theological book. When we say the heart, we're really saying the subconscious mind. We're not talking about the organ that pumps blood. So when we say go from our head to our heart, what you're really saying is going from conscious to subconscious.
Yeah.
Right. The subconscious is where we hold all the emotions and we tap into source and we feel. So it's interesting when we say heart, because we're not talking about the organ in the chest. We're talking about our soul, our spirit, our emotional mind. And this is where the left and the right kind of converge, right? We can take the stick man out and get a visual representation of the mind-body connection, or the head-heart connection, and how it processes through the body. So it's a point.
Yeah, I think this is Joe. Sorry, my camera's off. I'm walking around trying to
Hey,
get
Joe,
some.
what's up, brother?
Hey guys, what's coming up for me between these last two passages is like, there's levels, right? Like if we just absently speak the words and there's no conviction, that has less power than if we have the faith behind it. But I think there's next level above faith, which is kind of what we're talking about now, which is like expectations. Like I don't have faith the sun's going to come up tomorrow. I just expect it to come up. It's a core truth. It's so ingrained in my beingness that I don't even think about it. It's going to happen in my mind. I think there's a certain level of certainty that like deep faith gives you when you subscribe fully to the faith. And I think that's part of this is like, it's not just, you're talking about not just what to learn or, but how to learn. I think there's just certain things that we get and we believe in our core that are part of our soul, part of our DNA. And I don't know, the way that I experience that is the deepest things that I believe, I just expect them to happen. There's not even like a bump of novelty around it. I just expect it to happen. And those are the things that tend to happen in my life the most, including bringing my future reality into the present.
Joe, that's the first time I've ever heard it laid out like that. That you bring up a really interesting point about, I think faith is something that we practice when something is sort of unknown. But expectancy, like you said, you expect the sun to rise. We expect certain things, and you just brought up a point that's very interesting for me is getting to that level of expectancy. Whether there's something more than faith, or conditioning our minds to expect what we call, I guess, our C-type goals would be the thing. That's a very interesting point.
Want me to continue?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Brian, real quick,
Good.
question that came up as a result of Joe's share and your responses. I guess the question for me is, Joe's talking about the sun rising and his expectancy that it always will is based on proof that every day it's happened, and so therefore you can expect it to happen again. It's interesting. I'd be curious to get people's take on how do you go from, if belief is something that you feel is true despite not knowing it to be provable or true, how do you go from faith to expectancy on something that you don't have a body of evidence has come to pass many times before? Maybe that's what we're trying to get at.
I can
One of the
speak
ways that
go ahead.
No, good, bud.
I was gonna say, like, I got this mental model from, I was raised Christian, and I've prayed every day for I don't know how many years now, and it's like I expect that there is a God, a creator, a source, something above me. I've never seen it physically, but I just it's so ingrained in how I show up that like I just expect that there's God, that he receives my prayer. And so it's the same kind of thing, I think, with the goals. When we've envisioned them and we've uh, exercised our faith so frequently, at least my experience of that is there's a certain level of expectancy. Not the same as the sun coming up, because I've seen that happen, but to some extent, because I've set and achieved so many goals I thought were outside of my ability to do that, that when they come to me, I expect that they're given to me from something and there's a reason for that. So then I start to expect that, oh, this is going to happen. And so that's just my experience of it, if that's helpful.
Well, you bring up, in the way you explain that, Blake, what he's really talking about is chapter 4 in Think and Grow Rich. It's understanding the principle of autosuggestion, right? Joe said, I've been praying every day for 40 years. So it's very much that, right? When you have something that seems like it's false, like a C-type goal, it seems like fantasy or like just way out there. It might even seem like a lie because you're telling yourself it's done, right? That's what we're actually doing. And in the book Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill talks about it. He said, when I said this statement out loud, it seemed like a lie, but he kept repeating it anyway because he understood the principle of autosuggestion, your human ability to consciously repeat until the subconscious rewires your thinking, your belief system. You're installing a new program they didn't have before. So it's very much the morning, noon, and night healthy obsession of the idea, even if it sounds like a lie, because it'll go from a lie to like a fantasy, and from a fantasy to a theory, and then theory into material form. That's actually how autosuggestion works. So it's consistent space repetition over time that will rewire any belief system that you have. And the more emotional, oh, good.
Yeah, well, so I'm just trying to put it back to you, I guess, in my own words would be, it sounds like, and I sometimes get a little confused about whether you establish a paradigm and that leads to new habits, and then the results come toward the end. Okay, so you sort of exactly establish okay, great. All right, so clearly the thinking into results is thinking into my results. You
have to build the new mental program to get the subconscious mind to cause the body to do the thing. It's very much mental program turns into habit. Habit is a physical expression of a mental program. So the habit of smoking is not a physical thing. It's a mental program expressed physically, right? And if we can just remember that whatever you're looking to do that you haven't done yet, no matter how outlandish or how much it doesn't seem like you can, we're going to need to build the belief system through repetition. And then the other thing is through this, right? Through masterminding in the content, through tapping in the source. One of the things that was challenging for me because I was so left brain was understanding this concept of prayer, tapping in the source. What is source? I didn't know anything about that stuff up until my early 40s when I started studying with Bob and studying that and practicing that and then playing around with turning nothing into something. So probably have some look at that going on. I'd be curious, Matt Swerk, I know you're on, but can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm driving, Ryan. How you doing?
Good, bud. No, because you are very much like me. You were so damn left brain when we met. And
I was thinking the exact same. Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing as Blake's talking. I was like, I was there, Brian was there, and it's staying committed to the process. It'll work itself out.
I was going to ask you, because I know for a fact, when you were speaking some of your goals, you didn't believe them. It doesn't make sense to a left brain person. It seems like, well, that's not reality, right? So what are some of the things you did? Like you said, just sticking with the process.
It was sticking to the process. It was the idea of, and this was a, law of relativity, but this was a big idea to me, was the concept of needing to believe it in every single cell of my body. And more importantly, really diving into lesson 8 as far as praxis and what was integrating my behavior with my beliefs.
I love it. And that's a really good reminder, guys. Just, if you've gone through thinking and results, go through it again and again and again. You guys have access to it. It's all in there. And I see Chris shaking his head because Bob was an absolute genius at putting in my opinion, every single thing that we need to understand in thinking and results for the most part. What we're doing here is we're unpacking, we're getting a lot deeper, but you guys have access to it. So like I said, you can always point to a certain lesson. And then from Lead the Field, when you learn all the universal laws, we can always point to a certain universal law. So the more we understand these God-made laws or universe-created laws, the more we can apply them to really every single situation so that we can resolve and move forward. Yun,
Hey,
and then Mike.
Experience, Sheriff, if it's okay. To me, we all know that there's a difference between a head knowing and a heart knowing, but there's also, in my experience, a difference between a head knowing, a heart knowing, and a soul knowing, where all the trillions of cells in our bodies, each one believes something and knows something. It's a knowing. And so just a quick experience share. It was January 2nd, 2018, where I was sitting on my couch and I just had this little whisper. It wasn't an audible whisper, but it was just this message, Trey, you're not a drinker. And that was my last sip of alcohol. It wasn't stop drinking. It was Trey, you're not a drinker. It was more about the identity than the act. And so it wasn't like a challenge to change and to stop drinking. And that was actually when it was the first time in my life, Brian, that I knew that I didn't have alcohol, but alcohol had me. And so I just didn't drink again. And it was actually quite easy. And now, I can say, hey, I'm not a drinker. And this is how I know. And so I just wanted to share that that's a way to leverage just an immediate identity shift. And it's really going from a head knowing to a heart knowing to a soul knowing, and leveraging that and taking inspired action.
I think that's what happens over time. And again, one of the main purposes of this group is to ponder and to contemplate and to go from conscious to subconscious to source. That's literally what we're doing here week after week. So I love that, Trey. Yun?
Blake, I love your explanation. It's like a system. It is, right? It's like a system, but it's so true. One of the things I just wanted to interject is I truly believe that there's like no better feeling than having that emotion of faith through study and understanding. And Bob talks about it all the time, of that study and understanding. Blake, you just actually wrote inside the chat the same exact thing. When we start giving ourselves permission to go after it as something that we want, and we put our energy there, the order and the logic that it shows up in will show up for you. It will show up for you, like literally that. And then you will feel it in every single cell of your body. And what's amazing is that during that entire process, you almost get really falling in love with the unknown. The unknown becomes a known, right? And I'm sure that, Joe, you're feeling that now, is that everything that you want, it's here. It's just a matter of now you get to experience it in the way that it shows up. Right? It's already created. Because you do this in repetition, it literally shifts the way your brain thinks, and it starts shifting the way you see things. And you realize that you are absolutely creating in energy and just experiencing everything in the human.
That's a really good point. It takes a while from personal experience, but depending on where you are too. If you're more left-brained for 40 years and you're introduced to this idea of the universe and how things work, it takes a minute, and you got to remind yourself constantly. I think that's where the daily repetition, the daily study, the morning routines, we remind ourselves that we're primarily spirit expressing physically. And I'm somebody that needs that constant reminder because of the way I was programmed over time. Ara, you had your hand up, bud?
Yeah, Brian. Blake, it's funny. Before I started this program, in the beginning, I questioned, maybe some of you were there, you'd remember, to Phil and Brian, how the hell would this work in my mind? But just doing that repetition of the TIR over and over again, I've been able to change 2 traits of my personality that I've had for the past 60 years. Out of 5, I'm working on another 3. I know I'm a billionaire. My bank account doesn't show that yet, but I know that. That's where my left brain comes in very hard. I'm hitting a barrier there that the bank account doesn't show that, but I know I am one. But the proof and Brian, you know this very well because Brenda told you this in Miami. I've changed, and Eric knows this as well, if not more. I've changed my personality features that were quite harmful to me. And now with more ease, I'm able to do a lot more. But I didn't understand this till I think it was in Fort Lauderdale. You and I had spent some time and she helped me out with that stuff. I've been to implement that every day of my life and repetition. Now I believe I know I can do those things without even trying. So it works. Bottom line.
No, I remember that vividly. All right, you and I are very similar too. Similar backgrounds, going from engineering, to construction, very left brain, and I was very much the same way, guys. But when I met Bob, I didn't have the answers, and he appeared to. That was the biggest thing. Like my life was, went a certain way up until, my early to mid 40s, and my way wasn't working. And Bob even says this too when he met his mentor. So he didn't necessarily believe his mentor. He just knew that his way wasn't working, and why not try it for 12 months, right? So yeah, the left brain people, we have a more challenging time adopting the idea of autosuggestion and rewiring our belief systems. I think right brain people tend to just, oh, that sounds cool. It sounds good to me. Let's do it. Because they're tapped into source and they don't need the physical proof. And everybody's probably somewhere in between. Some people are right in the middle, and some are extremely left-brained. And Blake, by the questions you're asking, you're probably more left-brained, right? Technically, well, how does this work? What's the 1, 2, 3?
Yeah. For as much as I love writing music, writing creatively, these days, I think in the role that I play, it benefits me to take a pretty logical, analytical approach. So whether I'm denying my true self or not, maybe I'll end up talking with Yun about that later this year. But yeah, I tend to prioritize the analytical, no question.
I don't know if this might help, but often because I do have quite a few analytical students, engineers and architects and whatnot, but I just tell them, I say, listen, forget about believing it. Forget about whether it works or whether it doesn't and trying to dissect it. Just do it for 6 months. Just put all of your thinking on the shelf for 6 months and see how this works. Just trust the process. You already paid me, so just trust it. Just do it, and then we can analyze it at the end. Well, almost to the number, every single one of them by the end of the 6 months are like, I never want to think any other way again. This is because they start seeing the evidence, right? They start seeing the calmness. They start seeing the peace that they have. They start actually manifesting things that they've only dreamed about for years. And so often I think just specifically for the coaches out there, just tell them, say, listen, don't believe it. Just do it. Just trust it. Just trust the process exactly as it's laid out. And let's see where you're at 6 months, 12 months down the road.
That's a really good point, Chris. And it's a way to kind of pacify the left brain thinking, because your mind will keep doing what it does. But if you give that sort of solution or answer, it'll neutralize the conscious. Michael, Shine.
Here from the mostly right brain contingent. I had a phrase, an affirmation, which is, I'm a money magnet. Money flows to me easily, often, and abundantly in God's perfect way. And so I would say this all the time. And what I found was that I really started believing it when my friends would come up to me and say, Mike Shine, money magnet all the time. And so I think that having like an accountability buddy and have someone who recognizes that you're accomplishing things really made it true for me. Like, it's one thing if I say it, but then my friends were saying it. And then of course the money showed up too. That was a nice benefit.
That's a really good point. We're gonna do an exercise at the live event too to solidify this, because a lot of the goals you guys have, relatively speaking, most people won't believe. They may not be the best people to tell, but inside of this group, you're never going to bump into any one of us that says, oh my God, that's a massive goal, because there's no such thing, right? So I think it's super important to have like-minded people that understand how this all works, how we turn nothing into something. We manipulate energy into material. Antonio?
What's going on, Blake? So I'm a fellow recovering analytical too. I'm pretty analytical myself. I just wanted to point out one quick thing. So especially with people that kind of lean in that direction, that are very analytical, we typically don't jump into action unless the payoff is clear. So like we need to vet on how it works. And once we vet how it works, then we actually do it. And that's kind of what you're describing, what you're putting in there. And so I really want to point out the genius of what Chris Patterson also said, is that what he essentially did was it's a pre-frame, is that the data is going to be present in you doing it. And once you do it, then we can actually review what happened. And what it actually does is it frames us analyticals much easier, where it's like, I need to have your guys' proof when that's not the reality of the thing. So when I kind of applied that to myself, it made it easier to have that kind of ultimate buy-in than partial buy-in. And also borrowing the belief of others, borrowing the belief of other people that have also gone through this, that have reaped the benefits, and allowing that to be like okay, and like okay enough for me to also have that 100% all-in buy-in into actually doing it. And so that's what worked for me, and that's why, and that's trying to hack my own brain, knowing that I need that substance, and when it's not there, then I have to create it, and then
I've got a question for the analytics out there. Often when I'm trying to earn somebody's business, and at the end of the presentation, there's a pause. And what I've been saying lately is, listen, I can't help you commit, but once you do, I won't let you fail. And I've seen so many people just go, the pressure's off of me, pressure's on Chris, and I'll be able to go forward. But how does that make you feel? Or what thought processes happen when I say something like that as an analytic?
Blake, you want to, or?
Well, one
Sure.
thing I can.
Go ahead, Brian.
Like,
No, you go ahead. Well, I wanted to make sure I heard what you said, Chris. It was that you can't make me commit, but once I do, you and the community won't let me fail. That's a great.
I can't help you commit, but once you do, I will not let you fail.
Well, I feel the support not only from you, but from everybody in the chat and the heads bobbing. I can feel the degree to which everybody's invested in trying to get me from this. And the way I've learned to think about it after spending time playing professional poker and now more on the investment side is expected value, being able to basically multiply a dollar outcome times the probability that it'll happen, and then sum that across all scenarios. So that's probably what you guys are picking up from what I'm saying and in the chat. But I do know how supportive you guys will be if I just commit, and I'm very willing to make that commitment right now.
That's great. Thank you for that.
Thank you guys.
Chris, when it comes to me, when you ask that question, for me, probably one of the most extreme left mind people here, just mentally, not politically, is the issue of prove it to me before I trust you.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to come first. That's my problem.
Say that again. What's the problem here?
I need you to prove that you can do it before I trust you. Not you personally. The statement that you're talking about.
Yeah. So does it help to receive endless testimonials?
Yeah, but yes, but you know how testimonials are. You're not going to put the bad ones out there, the good ones. So I'm a skeptic, and Brian knows this very well. This is why it took me a little while to come here, but you got to prove it to me. Just like I have to prove myself to me and to everybody else. I just don't trust people just up front. I need them to make sure that they know what they're doing, what they're proving before I jump in. That's the answer to your question. And again, nothing personal.
Got it. Thank you.
And Chris,
Anyway.
I think it's a combination of both, right? It's you know, it's the words that you're saying and the energy you're putting out, and then obviously testimonials. So it's probably a 4 or 5 part process to get somebody from, like you said, our was very skeptical, just very, very left brain, right? Very calculating. So those type of people usually need facts and figures. They might need to talk to somebody, past clients, and then the energy of what you're saying. The only challenge about saying I won't let you fail is you're owning their success, which you actually can't do, right? It's 100. I tell people it's 100% on you. I said, if you follow this to the letter, Bob spent 63 years building it. You won't fail, but I won't tell them that I won't let them fail, because that's not something I can actually do. So I would just look at that. We can chat offline a little bit. It's maybe something we won't fail together. Like I'd rather not have their business than have them think that their success is on me.
Fair enough. Yeah. And then my next statement is usually, listen, all I'm asking for is 100% of your involvement, and I'll give you 100% in return.
Yeah.
And that's usually the next thing I tell them is, look, I'll give you 100%, but you got to give me 100%.
Yeah. That's a more fair statement for sure.
Yeah.
Amigo.
Amigo.
You have a question? Come, there you go.
What based on what I heard in the last 2 minutes, what it comes to mind is that don't forget that anything that is happening on present time is really not to be compared with the past, because whatever we are doing today, we cannot say, okay, because someone failed me in the past, this person also will fail to me in the future, like this different person, right? So I always not compare the present situation and the present person with anything that occurred in the past, because sanity is more equal to differentiation than to comparison. So if you are, if, let's say, a person thinks that a truck is the same that a car, that's insanity, right? But if the most the person is able to differentiate the things that are around his environment, the more sanity he can have. If you think like, oh, this guy cheated me in the past, so a lady thinks, so then I am not going to be with guys anymore because these other guys cheated me in the past. Well, that's not sanity. The person is operating in present time with things that happened in the past, but really the things in the present time are truly different. Or if you say, oh, I'm not going to try this diet because in the past these other diets didn't work, so everything will fail, it's not sanity. So that's what came to mind.
I love that. It's a really good point. When I'm working with clients, I usually, especially when it comes to people, right? And they say, I won't trust anybody anymore, right? It's like, well, it's just like real estate. You can get into a bad real estate deal, but more than likely, if you're in real estate, you're not going to throw the whole vertical out, right? You're not going to blame the industry of real estate usually on one deal that didn't go your way. You might learn a lesson, but the industry is one of the biggest wealth building industries in the world, right? If we figure it out. So I think it's important to categorize things and harvest the good and forgive the rest, right? There's reasons why we go through things. There's reasons why we take supposed losses or perceptible losses. And I think the whole key to thinking in results, and especially this group here at this level, is to use our perspective, right? And how we label things. And Ara, when you were talking about, traits that you've replaced, I like what you said, because you didn't call them bad traits. You were just like, traits that weren't serving me. That's a better way to look at it. It's not good or bad. It's just awareness. And I don't know where I was going with that, but it's perception, right? It's perception is the key. Perception will shape you guys' entire world, and especially what happened over this past weekend. Like how we perceive that is going to be vastly different. And we know that there's a law of polarity, right? Which means that there's an equal and opposite to everything. So if something's perceivably really horrible, then there has to be an equal and opposite amazingness. No matter whether we understand it or not, it's a God-made law, right? The law of polarity. So it's to really dig deep into content and to explore this stuff. Yun?
I so love this conversation. And, one of the things that I love is that lesson on the environment as your looking glass. Like if we ever need to know anything about us, like just really stay present in the moment, like Ivan was saying, and just look at the environment and think about the thoughts that we're receiving. I think it was Michael Shine that had mentioned and said, you know, I didn't start believing it until the friend started saying it. Well, truth of the matter is he started believing it, which is exactly why his friend started saying it. Right? It's like what came before the chicken or the egg, but it's always energy first. And everything in our entire reality is an expression of our underlying belief system. It's literally active vibrations within our body. So for example, if we find recurring thoughts of us not being able to trust someone, really what that should magnify is that where am I not trusting myself? Where am I not trusting myself? And once we start closing those gaps, then guess what? Because like the way energy works, the energy will find the lowest standard within us. And that thing, that lowest standard is usually what shows up in pattern for us to close the gap on. And once we close that gap and we release that energy, right? Release it, then we're in prime time to elevate to the next level again. And then again, energy will continuously will rise, will create, we're looking at our imagination, we're seeing our, you know, our spirit like creating and it manifesting into the physical realm. And then there's another low standard of energy. Like
yeah, it's the path of least resistance is what energy flows. And Ara, you remember that back from the engineering days, right? So we're creating new paths for the energy to flow. We're creating non-resistant paths. That's what we're doing with thinking and results, and not just thinking and results. We study so many things here in the Elite 100, right? Greg? Did you raise your hand, bud?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself and totally forgot how to operate Zoom all of a sudden. So one of the most powerful lessons or paradigms that many of us have carried with us is the fact that we wait for the result to produce the emotion. And one of the things that I had to sort of reprogram myself was like, you know, I'll be so happy when it was my birthday or when it's Christmas or whatever, right? And we have to release those, you know, those programmings because they're not serving our needs, right? And really expediting and collapsing timeframes to get to where we want to go faster. And so, and I think, you know, one of the most simplistic ways in which I've thought of it is the fact that, you know, of course, God doesn't make any junk. You know, we are created in his image. The same power that he possesses, we possess as well. And so we have the ability to call into many forms, in many ways, all the things that God has done, right? Creation is finished, as we know in the Power of Awareness, the previous book that we studied. You know, we're just simply calling into existence that of which has already been created for us. And you can't do it alone. You know, there's, you know, that spiritual journey that we're all on is very much a part of that. And so just to give yourself the grace, I think that's why it's so important and powerful to do meditation. And I would say the correct way, because a lot of people, Blake and I were having a side conversation about just, you know, meditation, just breathing. That's beneficial for sure. But when you really tap into the power of visualization, living in the spirit of the wish fulfilled and so on and so forth, that's when reality happens. And a lot of barriers are broken down very quickly. And so, and I have my own personal story with that, that I can elaborate on in Chicago probably, but it's an amazing experience when you just let all that crap go and just live in the infinite power of God's grace and will for you.
Well, I love what you're saying there, Greg, too, because it was one of the most confusing things for me is like, we need to spend time in the emotion of already having the thing, whatever the C-type goal is, which is like extremely challenging for physical people, left-brain people. It's like, you literally have to experience the joy, the love, the abundance before the thing happens. It's the way to accelerate all of it. Mm-hmm. And that can be challenging for people that, again, left-brain people are, you know, that are not used to doing that. But that's what Neville said, right? It's the secret is the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Mm-hmm. So it's holding the vibration of the goal achieved, you know, in the morning and at night and during the day, and getting to the point where it's more of a constant. I always talk about like a constant state of gratitude. I'm usually in, you know, I don't know what the percentage is, very high percentage of the time I'm in a state of gratitude. Very rare that I get into, you know, anxiety or fear. It just doesn't last long anymore. Not that it doesn't happen. but you know, I've been in this content for, I don't know, 10 years, every day for 10 years, right? And Bob was every single day for 63 years. So that's the secret, right? Is to stay in the content, you know, mastermind together here, and then have the morning routines, the nightly routines of tapping into source and getting into the spirit of the wish fulfilled.
Yeah.
Kevin, what's up, bud? Kevin, I was gonna pick you next to Reed, so glad you raised your hand.
Sweet. I just want to say that this is a great conversation because we've just been on this couple paragraphs and so many people have added their layers of perspective from different life views, and it's honestly like pretty profound. As we continue through, I'm like, oh, there's like layers and layers and depths to this discussion. And one thing that came to mind was nobody is born into their final form. It's always an evolution. It always comes from, you know, this spark of energy, as Yoon would said, where you know, you don't know what's going to happen, but you can see the future and what can come. And that always requires process, that requires a level of engagement and emotion to dive into something to truly make it a reality. And there are people who are given different platforms, different starting points, but even still, let's say you were an heir to a throne, an inheritance, like just because you're privy to something doesn't mean you're actually living that, and you're privileged to be the best version of that. So another aspect of this is really the power of language and words. You know, it touches on vain repetition, and we've already chatted through this a couple of times now, but until you like truly dive into it and you believe it, the words can either be profound and deep and impactful, you know, on a negative side, like Hitler, like his words moved a country to create destruction, or they can just be completely vain with, you know, no substance behind it. So language is something that you know, truly can be a lot more powerful than the sword many times over.
Oh my God, yeah. I have my own saying, I think I made this one. I said both Jesus and Hitler used nothing but words to create. Right? One is very constructive and one is very destructive. One lasted a small period of time, one's apparently infinite. But yeah, words are sound and sound is energy, but it's the emotion back behind them that gives power and resonance. I have something that might be beneficial to you guys. Something I said to Laura a while back. She had something, you know, fairly tragic happen in her life. And it's kind of like, you know, was it my fault, or why is this happening to me? And I said, you know, the lesson learned here, the lesson here might not be yours to learn, right? Because we always think, well, there's lessons in what's happening. You got to remember, there's like 7.5 billion people all manifesting in this planet. You know, it would be impossible to think we don't run into each other's manifestations and have impact from other people's thought patterns. It might have nothing to do with us, even though it impacts our life, right? So when something apparently tragic happens, I tend to look towards that. It's like, wait a minute, maybe this isn't my lesson to learn. I just might be in other people's manifestations right now. So hopefully that is something for you guys to think about. If you have something that's going on in your life that's you know, not fun or not working well, it might have nothing to do with what you're manifesting. Because we have all these other billions of souls running around doing the same exact thing, manifesting. So right, we're all clashing into each other's manifestations. It's just a different point of view.
Hey, Brian, can I share something that's been helpful for us?
Sure.
Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
To just going back to that comment about leveraging the power of identity. You know, I come from Tony land, from the Tony Robbins Platinum Partners, and something that he says often is there's no force greater in the human personality than to remain consistent with our identity, our I am. There's a consistency there that's incredibly powerful. And so a prayer, for those who believe in the power of prayer, that we say often in the Roth House is, God, show me what you see when you see me. Show me what you see when you see others. Show me what you see when you see my past, my present, my future, my job, my purpose, etc. Starting with show me what you see when you see me, to something that you said, Brian, about us being created in God's image. Like when I look at Brian, how Brian is made in God's image. I see God's expression of himself through Brian. I see that, and I've prayed, show me what you see when you see me and others. And so and a follow-up to that is, show me, why do you love me unconditionally? Why do you love Brian unconditionally? When you look for that, you see it. Because seek and you shall find and you shall feel, fill and you shall attract, which I know, Brian, you have certain thoughts on that I really appreciated from a previous call. But I just wanted to share that real quick. Very, very powerful and helpful prayer in our house. Show me what you see when you see me. Show me what you see when you see others.
I love that, Trey. That's thank you for sharing that. So it sounds like that's something that you've instilled in your family, your children, in your household. I love it. Love it. Love it.
Can you just
Awesome,
picture
awesome.
the ripple effect of those kids?
Yeah.
Like seriously, like
I think about that. I think
Ray,
about
my heart is like fluttering out of my chest right now.
Mm.
Like we are so powerful. All you got to do is ask yourself great questions, right?
Yeah.
Like literally, all the answers are within. It's
Mhm.
oh, Trey, I love that.
Awesome, everybody. Well, I do want to remind you guys, if you want to join next Monday night's Mindset Masters, like I said, we're just gonna kind of a campfire, organic, conversations about Tharifa and her amazing lights. So you're more than welcome. Valerie, can you make sure and drop the link to the Mindset Masters in the WhatsApp group so these guys can join if they want? It's next Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, and we're going to invite all 4 groups. So. But then on a good note, we got the live event coming up. More excited than ever, guys. We got some surprises there. One thing I'm going to throw out there, and this is off topic. A couple of weeks ago, I went to go see that movie Sounds of Freedom. Highly, highly recommend it, especially if you consider yourself a patriot or, somebody that is, of this country and supporting people that put their lives in harm's way, like day to day. It's amazing to see what some people will do, putting their own lives on the line. It's just an absolutely amazing movie. And there's something from this movie that ties into the live event in Chicago. We have a surprise for you guys. So I think it would be amazing to see that. Greg?
Just real quick, do we have a loose agenda yet, or anything? for
Yeah,
us to-
I think it's coming out. We said 2 weeks before we get you guys the full agenda. Other
Okay.
than, we have the Gatsby party Wednesday night, so everybody's coming in Wednesday. I think that's at 5 or 6 o'clock, and then 3 full days, and then Sunday we're gonna have a farewell brunch. But we'll get you guys the full agenda.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else? Any questions before we wrap up? All right. Well, much love. We'll see you guys soon. Have a great week. Be well and God bless.
Thank you.
Bye,
Love
everyone.
you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good day.
There, bye.
Amigo.